a special edition, interesting one at that, of Group Chat podcast. So please grab a cup of coffee.
Just coffee?
No. Tea.
Okay.
Coca-Cola.
Okay.
Or vodka.
Vodka?
P.S. Do not drink and drive. In case if you're driving or you're trying to listen to this podcast, please. Now, just buy gala or lacasera in traffic to enjoy this edition.
Hello. Welcome to Rook Chat Podcast Episode 3. My name is Uncle Lobos.
And my name is Bukola. For the past 3 weeks, we've been reading headlines about kids dying, about women killed, about families losing their loved ones in an attack between Palestine and Israel. Sitting home and listening to this, I'm sure you'll be wondering, what is my business? How does this relate to Gary in the market? How does this relate to the things going on in Nigeria? But honestly, if we are all humans and seeing these headlines, it's sad. And I want us to know that if you're sitting in the corner of your room, if you're driving, if you're with your partner, it is crucial for everyone to know how it all started and how this affects everybody, everyone, regardless of the country you're in, regardless of whatever you're doing. So now, I'm not a history person, I'm more of a science person. I have Mr. Uncle Lobos. So we have Uncle Lobos in here to actually give us
just an overview, not a deep history, just an overview. So guys, I'm just going to explain what Palestine is, the partition of Palestine, when Israel became a state, what the PLO is and when they were born, and also the 6-Day War. So I'm just going to give a brief summary on this, and after that we're going to play you a video from an expert that actually explained further what is happening currently. So basically what we're talking about in this first half is just the past and how all this sadness came to be. So Palestine is a small region of land that has played a prominent role in the ancient and modern history of the Middle East. They've been ruled by several empires and several superpowers in the past. The Roman Empire's rule has gotten there, the Abyssinian empires, the Persian empires, the Arabians, the Egyptians, everyone has ruled over this small piece of land.
What out of all the people you just mentioned, they can't be Nigerian or the Africans ruling?
Okay, so Egypt is in Africa.
Oh yeah, sorry, pardon.
Egypt is an African country.
But Egypt people don't see themselves as African.
Yes, unless when it comes to playing Nations Cup.
Yeah, I know.
They see themselves more like Arabs. But the actual Egyptians, that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
The actual Egyptians are not the modern day Egyptians. They're not curly hair, they're not fair skin like the Arabs. The actual Egyptians were actual ancient people.
They had that skin.
They had darker skin. But there was a time that there's another kingdom that was at the lower part of the what's the name of that river in Egypt again? The Nile.
Yeah,
at the lower part of the
the
Red Sea is the sea at the top. So the Red Sea is what separates Arabian Peninsula, where Israel and all these people are, and Egypt. But there's now a river. I think that's one of the longest rivers in the world. It is not the longest, but it's one of the longest. It's called the River Nile. At the bottom of River Nile, there used to be a kingdom there called the Kingdom of Kush. So those Kingdom of Kush, they're actually dark-skinned Africans, and after a while, they actually conquered Egypt. So that's when you now had that mixture of those old Egyptians. So all those pyramids and those stuff, they're not built by these Egyptians that we have now. They were built by the ancient Egyptians. So that's part of what we're going to discuss. So as I explained, Palestine is just a small region of land in the Middle East. So it's bordered by the Red Sea. It has different countries around it. It's got Syria, it's got Jordan, it's got Israel, it's got Egypt, all these Arab countries and all this. Most of them are Arab countries because they're Muslim, they're Islamic. So the partition of Israel actually happened in 1947. The British took control of this piece of land, this area where Israel and Palestine is, 2 decades before 1947. And this is because that area was actually controlled by the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire's capital was in Istanbul, which we now know as Turkey. So the Ottoman Empire, they're not an empire, they're just a country now. They're now the Turkish people. But back in the days, the Ottoman Empire was one of the strongest empires in the world. It even stretched all the way to Europe. They conquered so many people. They were the one that turned Constantinople into modern day Istanbul. Constantinople used to be the other half of the Roman Empire. But when the Islamic people, which are the Ottomans, when they converted to Islam and they all got their shit together and they started conquering, they actually conquered Constantinople. So the defeat of Constantinople actually marked the end of the Roman rule. So now from there, they now spread their wings and all these areas was under their control. But after the First World War, because as we know, the First World War, we have the Allies and we have the Axis. The Axis are the Germans, the Ottoman Empire. They were the bad guys in the First World War. Germans are always there. Then the good guys, according to history, the Americans, the Europeans, exactly. England, you know, mother God save the Queen. Anyways, as we talk, they go. After the First World War, the Ottoman Empire was absolutely destroyed because they were not ready for the modern war. They were still fighting on horseback with sword and stuff.
Just like the way it was in, what's this movie?
What movie was that again?
No, I'm just talking about the Aussies and Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Yeah.
They were fighting the Game
So
of Thrones.
basically, the Ottoman guys, they were still in their Game of Thrones mood. While the British, the French, all those guys, they have the Gatling gun.
And those guns that
they have those
shakabula.
They have all those kind of guns. They have mortars. They have tanks. So imagine you're coming with us. And someone is coming with a armor tank.
It's like when Shango is fighting. Maybe Shango is fighting white people. Shango is not doing the same thing.
Shango is doing Kalashnikov.
AK-47.
Well, anyways, I'm blasted down. So that's how the Ottoman Empire ended, and the British got full control of most of the Middle East. So you see, Saudi Arabia was not a country before then. It was the British people that actually partitioned that area and created Saudi Arabia. For Saudi Arabia, it was a man that actually reunited all the tribes together. And it is still his children and his generation that is ruling Saudi Arabia to date. So there was no country as Saudi Arabia. There was no country as Israel. There is still no country as Palestine, even though that is what everybody is fighting for. So the British are the ones that actually went into the Middle East and Tabaru everywhere, created Iraq, created Iran. You know, they just scatter everywhere. The French too were there, the Germans were there. Basically, they just went to the Middle East and they just scattered the Middle East.
Just the way they did Africa.
Just the way they did Africa. But it's just bad that Middle East had already been developed already and they've already had their issues. So them going there is like they pour fuel on top fire. So anyways, when the partition came about in 1947, 2 decades after the British rule, the United Nations proposed a plan to partition Palestine into 2 sections. An independent Jewish state, which we now know as Israel, and an independent Arab state, which is what is meant to be Palestine. But till today, the Israel don't recognize Palestine. And a lot of countries don't recognize Palestine. I think America too doesn't recognize a country like Palestine. But Nigeria and I think 132 countries around the world recognize Palestine as a state of its own.
Probably going to be majorly East countries.
Yeah, those Arab people, yeah. So after that, immediately the British, they just, you know what they always do now. Once they don't chop, they go fly, come out. After 1947, the British just decided, boom, they left in May 1948.
So you remember it saying to me that the Jewish, right, in Europeans, they were chased out and they were sent to that piece of land. When did this actually happen?
Okay, so the history of the Jewish people is a very long history. They are always spreading around the whole of Europe. You find them every single place in Europe. There is nowhere in Europe where you don't find Jewish people. Before there was America. So these Jewish people, they spread out around the whole of Europe because they are more like money men. So they were the banks before they were banks. So they're very smart when it comes to money and treasures and accounting. So they spread around the whole of Europe. So what now happened is that because Christianity became a popular religion, Jews have always been oppressed from the dawn of Christianity. When the Romans accepted Christianity and Christianity became the major religion in the world. Jews have always been persecuted anywhere they go, anywhere in Europe that they go, and I don't know about the Middle East, but in Europe they were killed in Russia even during the Second World War. The amount of Jews that died in Russia under Stalin is almost the same as the amount that Hitler exterminated. And even before the hundreds of years before then, if anything bad happens in one community, now the Jewish people that they go kill. So imagine hundreds and centuries of being oppressed. So in your head, you no one agree again. So when 1948 came, after they killed like almost 6 million, or I can't really remember the amount of numbers of Jews, that the Germans, if they killed them like cow.
Now I understand why I saw a meme about Hitler, that they said that he left some Jews purposely to show how cruel the Jews are. Do you see that meme on Twitter? It's been going on.
But that's an anti-Semitic.
What is that?
So basically, anti-Semitism is when you're hating on Jews.
Yeah, I know.
It's just like Islamophobia when you're hating on Muslims. So all those stuffs. Me, I don't believe that certain people are bad or certain people are good. We always have good people and we have bad people naturally, regardless of the color, religion, shape, size, or whatever, your sex, anything. We have good people, we have bad people. So to continue my point, these Jewish people, they've been oppressed for centuries all over Europe. So after the Second World War, because that Second World War actually brought attention to the persecution they're facing, because Hitler systematically, he actually created an economy to eliminate these people. He was killing them en masse, like tear gas, walk onto them. So they faced horrible stuff, which it is a bad thing for anyone to face. Black people, they faced that during slavery. Even till now, we're still facing some bad stuff. They too have been facing their own for centuries, even before they even knew there was even black people. Jewish people have been persecuted just because now they kill Jesus. Now waiting that they always talk, saying that Jew people kill Jesus, which is anti-Semitic. We know even Jesus himself was a Jew. Jesus was not a Christian, because what is Christianity? Followers of Christ. So he was born into that Judaism. So him too, he was Jew, but the Jewish people, they believe that there's a savior coming, because before Moses died, he said that there will be a savior coming to wash their sins and everything. But they thought that it was going to be, according to some books that I've read, they believed that till now the Jewish people are still waiting for their savior. They don't believe that Jesus is the savior, because he didn't come from the Aaronian lineage, or he didn't come from a very important family. It was just Joseph and Mary won't believe. So that's why Christians always use the excuse in those days, even now. All these anti-Semitic people, they always believe that, oh, they're the one that killed Christ and everything. But let's forget that one. Let's talk about how Israel became a state. So in 1948, when the partition actually was proposed by the British to the United Nations, the British just left. And immediately they left in May. After they left in May, Israel declared itself a state.
Wow.
Just like that. As Israel declared itself a state, all the Arab countries, almost immediately, all the neighboring Arab armies, they moved in to prevent the establishment of Israel being a state, just to show you the fear.
Yeah, but coming to like this now, remember also you saying to me that that particular region was like, we had different people staying there. We have the Jews, we have the Palestinians, we have the Muslims and all the but you said the majority people in that
were
area
Arabs.
Were Arabs.
Yeah, so the Palestinians are more Arabs.
Yeah.
The Jews they're also from that area.
Yeah.
But in this piece of land where they fight over now, the majority of the people there were Arabs. So you see, most of this Israeli now, most of these people that are in Israel now, they are coming from Europe. After that Second World War, where they don't kill them. So they actually found a place to call their own. Exactly. So immediately they call it their own. All the Arab armies around them, they just fire straight. Say, waiting to happen. If you come here, you know, say, so land grab. So now, so everybody they fight. So that is why they call it the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. And it's the Arab countries that were involved with Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Lebanon. But by the end of the war in July 1949, Israel already had more control of more land than they actually partitioned for them.
Wow.
So you see that West Bank now where they fire rockets from. that one, Egypt took that one.
Egypt.
Yeah, because Egypt too were among the Arab countries that came to fight.
Okay.
So Egypt took that one.
Grab that one, yeah.
Egypt grabbed that one. Jordan took control of the West Bank. Sorry, Egypt took control of Gaza,
Okay.
which is where they say the Hamas people, those
the
Hamas.
Hamas, yeah.
Why these people took over the West Bank, Jordan.
Okay.
But so as those one come out, Israel now had more land. You understand now? They give us small land. We claim say this land our land.
Yeah.
As we claim them, everybody can't attack us. We can't fight them.
Then
Push them, come
now.
grab more land.
Grab more. Wow.
So that's how the land grabbing started. Because
Wow.
they were attacked.
Oh, okay, now I understand.
Just because the Arab countries they didn't want an Israeli state created.
But that was what eventually happened because they now even have more
Power.
more power to themselves.
You understand?
And they're actually backed by the Europeans.
Yeah, of course. America just gave them like a 3-point-something billion aid for the next 10 years.
Why?
Nobody knows what is between Israel and America.
It's like the secret between husband and wife.
Yeah.
Nobody can come in.
Nobody can come between them. So, anyways, let's go back to waiting in the talk. So
Yeah.
the PLO, as I said, we're going to talk a little bit about the PLO. So the PLO is the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO. It was formed in 1964. So
Know your history. Know your history. If you don't know your, at least marry a history person. If your wife historian or husband historian.
I no be historian, no, but I used to read a lot when I've been in secondary school for citizens. Shout out to Citizens Comprehensive College, Temu Ekpe.
Shout out to Comprehensive High School, Alakpere Ketu.
Citizens Comprehensive College is a private college.
Well,
You get
I'm
me?
a proud student of a government institution.
We still met ourselves in London, but it's all good. So while I was in secondary school, I used to read a lot. Our library was opened when I was in GS2 or GS3, and they brought these world books.
You had
So
no library.
you had no library. Maybe no. Maybe that's why you don't know this. So world book, they always go library, go read world book, because that was the only connection we had to the outside world. You know, then internet was not something that we could go on here. So I just used to read a lot. Read any book I
my
see.
brother.
Yeah. So in 1964, the PLO was officially formed for the purpose of them forming a Palestinian Arab state on the land previously administered by the British Mandate. So now you understand what they happen now. In 1948, Israel declared itself. Everybody go fight Israel. Israel still gets more land.
Yeah.
So now in 1964, some people can come together, call themselves PLO. Say them too, they won't create their own states because the British Mandate separated land.
Yeah.
Say Gaza Strip, waiting they call them the West Bank.
Tel Aviv.
It belongs to the Arabs. Then all this Tel Aviv and all those places, it belongs to the. So it's actually divided into 3 sections. But me, I know if you explain that one. Someone that has more understanding of that fact will explain it. So that's part of that video we're going to play for you guys very soon. So let me continue this story now. So I know people that listen to. When I was younger, I used to watch the news, not out of fun, but because my grandfather was watching and I was forced to watch, or my uncles were watching.
My grandpa makes me watch Indian film.
Indian film.
Yeah, all this the promise.
Jesus.
Yeah, Wadaraha.
Yeah.
Kabikushi Kabiku.
Nah, so.
Shole.
Nah, so.
Tell me, you know what Shole?
I can't even remember.
Tufan.
I watch Tufan. I watch Dramendra, Burning Train. But let's not lose focus, babe. So in 1969, the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, may Allah rest his perfect soul, he became the chairman of the PLO and he held that title until the day he died in 2004. So I also explained that after the PLO, we're going to talk about the 6-day war. So there was a war fought for just 6 days. Now I need you to remember that the first war was fought in 1948 when Israel declared itself a state. All those Egypt, Lebanon, Iraq, all those people, they came together to come out. Syria, they came to fight, but Israel still got more land, and Egypt and Lebanon got some small piece of land too. But this 6-day war was triggered during a volatile period of the diplomatic friction and skirmishes between Israel and its neighbors. So when we say Israel's neighbors, we're talking about the Arabs. In April 1967, the clashes worsened after Israel and Syria fought a ferocious air and artillery engagement in which 6 Syrian fighter jets were destroyed.
Wow.
So in the wake of this, the Soviet Union provided Egypt with intelligence and some armor. So this is the height of the Cold War. So the Cold War is when America was fighting. So there were two superpowers in the world, America and the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So the Soviet Union, aka the USSR, aka Russia. So these two, after the Second World War, two of them were the strongest. They had the strongest army, the best artillery. So two of them were superpower, nuclear power. So they always who get the longest dick, the longest. Now, so what is people they do now? No vex. But there's no filter in our chat. So let's continue. So during the Cold War, this is in the 1960s. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union were supporting Egypt with intelligence and some other ammunition, while the Americans, of course, and the British were supporting Israel. This war lasted only 6 days.
Wow.
It lasted so basically, let's just say what happened at the end of the war. At the outcome of the 1967 Arab-Israeli war, the tension in that area just worsened. That's all. And Israel had more land.
So all this story you gave me is just the fact that Israel
they collect more land. So is that land where they grabbed for 1967? That is that place, and that place is still part of Palestinians to today. So since that 1967, Israel has left troops in that place till now. So that is what is causing this fight. The Palestinians like carry your people come out, but they no agree. Carry your people come out, they no agree. So now, in 1987, the first intifada broke out. That's when the Palestinians finally said, "We've had enough. We want to be recognized. We want our own country, and we want you, Israel, to live." Now, put in mind now, as at 1987, the Arabs and the Israelis, they're not actually going face to face to fight anymore. Now just diplomatic sanctions and all this stuff. Politics now, basically politics they happen now. But the Palestinians themselves, they know they fight. They know they injure anybody. They just talk to, we just want our land. Israel leave. Make we control our own. Israel no agree, and so fight starts. So it is now this first intifada that brought about Hamas. So Hamas is a political group, but in the world they call them terrorists now. Jewish people call them, the Israeli call them terrorists, white people call them terrorists.
IPOB.
Terrorists, exactly. Now you don't understand. IPOB no be terrorist group, but they just fight, say they want Biafra, they want their own this thing. So now waiting Hamas to start with that for this intifada. We no want you people for our country. Just give us our own country. We want to be recognized. Let's rule ourselves.
We don't want you guys to
but they no agree. So they went through the political zone. They won most of the election in the Palestine, because Palestinians at that time was already recognized by some countries that is a state on its own. So they won majority of the election and they came into power. That's the Hamas. They came into power. But the Israel people, they no agree. And so fight start again for 1987. So basically the fight in the Middle East has been since 1948. This fight where we see now is been going on and off since 1948, and we're in 2011 now. This is really sad.
This is really sad.
So that's just a little bit of history.
That's not even a little bit, that's a long bit of history.
Which we just summarize now. The next audio you're going to hear now is from a Twitter handle called Alish Salom. It's just a lady speaking in an interview, explaining what is going on right now in Israel. So please listen.
That Hamas controls Palestine. That's not true at all. There's 3 different areas that were drawn up with the original partition. It's the West Bank, which is totally under military rule by Israel, and then there's the Gaza Strip, which is the open air prison, which they bomb the shit out of every couple of years, and Hamas controls that area. And then there's Jerusalem, which is an international city center that both Arabs and Jews live in. But the West Bank has been occupied militarily since 1967, and it's complete martial law. There's checkpoints. All political parties are illegal. Having a gun is the least of it. You can't hold a flag. You can't belong to a political party. You literally can't do shit if you're a Palestinian. You just have to sit there and submit. Even if you share a photo of someone who was killed by an Israeli soldier, you go to jail. And you go to jail for the amount of months that...
What?
Yeah, based on the shares and likes of the photo, they'll penalize you more and put you in prison for longer and longer. It is absolutely insane. We went to... The first day that we were there, we went to a funeral of some guy, some farmer who was shot by Israeli forces, and we went to the funeral. It was horrible. All the women are wailing and crying, and as we're leaving, the Israeli forces had set up a checkpoint right outside of this dude's house and started tear gassing and shooting rubber bullets like at people who were simply attending the funeral, just to punish people for attending the funeral. We went to another girl's house named Aya, who got shot in the vagina for peacefully protesting at some protest, and they shot 200 people that day. Wow. One guy next to her died, another guy was paralyzed.
You, man,
they have a policy called shoot to cripple, where they shoot guys in the dicks. Yeah. I mean, it's fucking nuts, man. The West Bank is no joke. I thought that I was gonna die several times. And
it's just evil.
The person who was driving us had just told us that a couple months prior to that, some woman, Palestinian woman, because you can't go to Jerusalem, like if you're Palestinian, there's like barely any Palestinians who are even allowed to go pray at the most holy site, the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. You can't go to the beach. You're just completely constricted in a prison, and you can't travel. And he was just telling us that months before we went through this checkpoint, someone was going through the checkpoint because they got a permit to go into Jerusalem, which is like a lifetime golden ticket, like Willy Wonka. And they're walking and they get, and she just got executed. And then,
what?
Yeah, she just got executed, and she was bleeding out at this checkpoint, and her little brother tried to help her, and they shot him too. And they're like hiding the video of this. And this is just a day, because they fucking hate Palestinians, and Palestinians are animals to these people. It's sick, man. It's sick. You have to be to maintain this Jewish supremacist state. You have to be like more fascist and more controlling and more militaristic in the way that you rule society, just like the US. I mean, people who were considered outlier fringe assholes 30 years ago are now like the Christian evangelicals are now in power. It's really, really crazy. I mean, it's not the same because Israel is a white nationalist, like ethno-supremacist state. And you see the way that they treat Ethiopians and African refugees, and it becomes obvious that even if you're a Jew and you're black, you still are a second-class citizen there.
When you're saying occupation, you mean occupation of Palestine or occupation of Israel itself, the West Bank?
So the West Bank has been militarily occupied since 67. So when Israel was created in 48, there were those 3 partitioned areas that I talked about, and ever since that happened, Israel has just continued to take over more and more land in the West Bank. So these settlements just keep growing and growing and growing and growing. Over time, there was like mass resistances that happened, and then in 67, Israel was like, we're just going to do a large-scale invasion and try to take over all the land, and then they just stayed and occupied this area, and they just have been there ever since. And so that's like the huge international crime, when the international community is like, by the way, these settlements are illegal, and we're like condemning you at the UN, and the US just vetoes it every time, because the US is just like boys with Israel unconditionally. It's sick, man, and they just signed that $10 billion aid package. Giving it to Israel for the next 10 years actually I think it was $30 billion over the next 10 years, which is crazy because this would never be able to happen if it weren't just completely supported by the U.S.
One day,
why is it supported by the U.S.?
I don't know. I think that the U.S. loves using Israel as a military garrison. They love using that strategic point in the Middle East to have. But honestly, it's becoming so unpopular. Obama had a big feud with Netanyahu. I mean, Trump is disgusting because Jared Kushner is personally invested in illegal settlements, and he like is boys with Netanyahu.
Invested financially?
Yeah, the Kushner Foundation, like his family's actual foundation, has funded illegal settlements. But if you fund some charity in Gaza, you will go to jail for supporting terrorism. But you can go fund illegal settlements and sponsor settlers to go and live on top of Arab villages, and that's fine. I guess that's freedom.
Do you think that most people just aren't aware?
Yes. I didn't even know.
So this is Joe Rogan, by the way.
And you've been pretty vocally pro-Palestinian for a while. I remember you had a piece that you were criticized about on your show where you were furious about.
And that's the
Oh my God, yeah. And people are just, it's so confusing and convoluted on purpose because it really relies on Israel being the victim and for people not really understanding that Palestinians are not all terrorists and that it's really just a case of being occupied. But a lot of these
Israelis want? They just want to push the Palestinians completely out? And where do they want them to go?
They want them, they don't care as long as they're gone. As long as they're gone.
That audio was, I had goosebumps and I felt so sad, and it's so sickening for this time, for we in this modern age, and these things are still happening.
I think the problem in the Middle East has to do with America. Just like, I'm not blaming them, but if America actually stand up and fight against all these problems. But I think it's a benefit for all these white people as the problem they have.
I just wish that everyone can just stay in their lane, control your land.
But that's not human nature, though. Human nature is always ojukokoro.
But I feel the world is going to be a better place when everybody mind their businesses. America, mind your business. Europe, mind your... First, everything you've done wrong, you need to correct it. Stay in your fucking lane. Stop meddling in people's lives.
Yeah, but the problem is that's never going to work. But what history has taught us is that once people start taking something, they will keep taking till they can't take no more, and themselves gets overtaken. You know, like for road for Nigeria. Because for example, let's look at all the great empires in the world. The Egyptian Empire was conquered by several other empires. The Roman Empire, as I explained to you, was destroyed. The Roman Empire was even actually split into two. They got so big because they conquered Europe, Africa, and Asia. They got so big to the extent that they had to be split into two. So you had the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western Roman Empire actually ended when the barbarian invaded the Rome itself and they pieces them. So that's when that Western, but the Eastern still survived until the what's their name, the Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople. What's the name of this guy? So Alexander the Great, him too, he was conquering. He even got to India
to go and conquer again.
That was the last frontier he got to before he came back and he died. His kingdom too did what? He destroyed. The British people too, they took over the whole world. Waiting happened too. Everybody collect their independence.
What I'm just going to chip in is that I know we've seen movies whereby we watch Game of Thrones and movies like that. But I feel what people don't understand is they just watch the movie. They don't actually understand that these are things that actually happen and
real life.
Happening.
Yeah, it's still happening.
So just imagine you watching Game of Thrones and it's happening in a real life scenario. Like you're going to be shaking the way people die. People die for no reason.
For no bloody reason.
For no reason. You guys can just go to a particular place where people were living. Even if it's Gary and beans they are eating, you just go there and just wipe them off the face of the earth. Let's just now come back home. Let's come back home to our own country, Nigeria.
Yeah, that brings us back to Nigeria and what is happening in our own country.
Do you understand? Like, so everyone with this story, you could tell that even with our problems, we have people with bigger problems.
Of course.
And we have people with smaller problems.
Yeah. But problem na problem.
Problem na problem. Exactly. Problem no they finish.
You know they finish.
Unfortunately,
you know they finish.
Even as the world evolves. Your
problem evolves.
Your problem evolves. So coming back home, seeing the situation of the country, I still just want to fucking say it. Everyone mind, stay in your lane.
100%.
Presidency, stay in your lane. Don't meddle with CBN. Don't meddle with
IGP.
Senate. Don't meddle with
the local government.
Military.
Don't meddle with the state government.
Don't use these people to.
Okay, so I think what we've learned from all this, what is happening in Israel and the partition and everything, is that Nigeria claims to be a federal republic, as we said in our previous episode. If you people have listened to it, please go on
if you've not,
Spotify,
go
on AudioMac, go on anywhere you can get podcasts from. We're on Google Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Anchor, we're on AudioMac, we're on Apple Podcasts. We have 2 episodes already.
Everywhere.
We're everywhere. So
in your face,
in your ear, in your heart. So please listen, subscribe, drop a comment, tell us what we can improve on, tell us what we can keep doing. But the major thing I need you people to do is actually listen to those podcasts and understand what the point we're trying to bring. The first podcast is about Twitter in Ghana.
Yeah, we're just chilling. We're chilling.
Then the second podcast is about printing money.
Yeah.
So that printing money, if you're a Nigerian or if you're an African or if you're someone that is interested in Nigerian politics or African politics, you need to listen to our second podcast because it will explain the concept of what is going on in the country. And we give a bit of ideas on what can be done to make it better.
Yeah. My own what can be done in this situation is please mind your business. Stay in your lane. Do your bit in your own lane. Stop meddling in people's affairs. Don't leave the north and say to me that you want to conquer the south Nigeria.
Because you remember the southern governors came together to make a meeting, and the northern governors, the northern forum, they quickly released a statement that we too want to lead. All of them in Nigeria are just acting like children. All the leaders, the people that are meant to be leaders, they're acting like children. First of all, the presidency, I don't know what in the president they do. The spokesman for the president was talking about Man City and stuff in the other.
No, they even released a press statement about Palestine and Israel. I'm like, what the heck?
Ona never solve on our own problem. Ona they release press statement about Palestine, but I understand it makes sense for them to do that. But the problem is, they be like waiting that they call these people where we say you go do one thing, you go do another.
No, I'm just like, when your own roof is on fire and you're just looking at someone else's roof, I don't understand. How do you want to
mind your own business, Abby?
Like your own roof is literally on fire.
I think the topic of this podcast is mind your own business.
Mind your business. Stay in your lane and do you.
So Nigerians, our advice to you is let us all stand together and fight for a federal system. Let each state control its own state. Let each government power, each government arm control. The judiciary should not be under the presidency or the Senate. The Senate should not be under. So the Senate is the legislation. The legislature should not be under the judiciary or the executive. The executive should not try and say what CBN should do or what this person should do. The executive should be executive and execute. Let the IGP run his own thing. The problem is that the police, the IGP, all of them, they bow down to the presidency.
Yes. Like,
give us state police, and that state police too should only answer to the IGP, and the IGP should answer to the Senate, not to the president. The power of the president is too much. They have too much power. That power needs to be broken down, and the person that we need to give most power to is the local government. Because if the local government has power, if something is wrong with your transformer now, you're meant to go and meet your chairman. You're not meant to go and meet your governor. Now your chairman is supposed to go meet. So if you go meet your chairman and tell your chairman, say, Chairman, no, how far? This road bad, this lights don't cut, this one don't do. Chairman, I beg, help us. The chairman should have the power to actually have the funds to do this, but corruption will be more transparent, because any money that comes to the local government, everybody in that local government have access to it, and they know how much it is.
You know the number of people in your local government.
Exactly.
You know the pikin they born for that month. You know the pikin where do you understand?
Yeah, so all this registration, we need databases, not just all this NIN and other stuff. For hospitals, you need proper database. So as people they are being born, you're registering them immediately in the local government.
Your local government. Well, I'm still going to still in this matter. If Palestine are controlled by them, if they are controlling their states themselves,
anything where they want to, make them do.
If Israel to stay in their lane, control, do you understand?
Israel, they act on fear. But now they're no more fear, they're not the oppressor, they're actually the terrorists now. Because you go another person country since 1967, you don't date their country. You don't date their country since 1967.
You're still doing land grabbing.
You're still doing land grabbing. Child God.
Well,
might not be headsman.
Anyways, on today's episode of this podcast,
mind your business.
Mind your business. Israel, mind your business. Pakistan, stay give them the control to mind their business.
Yeah, let Palestine to be able to mind their own business. Give them that power. Give them that freedom. Let them be free.
Nigeria, let states to do what?
Do their own.
Mind their business.
And if you cannot give states power, if IPOB won't go, if Biafra won't go, let Biafra go. If Hausa people won't go, if that is what is going to solve our problem, let everybody mind their own business.
Mind their business and manage their resources the way they can. If now
because if you mismanage your resources, as you said the last time, if person manage your own resources, everybody go they see say now you manage your own.
Do you understand? So it's just
you know go they blame federal government.
So it's not only on Instagram people are minding their business. To
everybody in the world.
Everyone in the world.
Everybody in the
US,
world.
mind your business.
Everybody, UK, mind your business. Nigeria, mind your business. Israel, mind your business. Let Palestine be able to mind their own business too. I beg. You don't too much. The killing is unnecessary. I don't even know why people fight. Really, this is why when it comes to religion, I don't like religion at all. Because I feel religion is the root of all evil. Because you be Christian, you don't like Muslim. You be Jew, you don't like Christian. You be Muslim, you don't like Jew. All of them are just they fight on ourselves. Go to India. The Hindus, they fight the Muslims. The Sikh, they fight the Hindu. Them today, they kill them. Religion, they kill everybody. Now religion, they cause wahala for everywhere. Come on, religion. Wahala no go finish. Wahala go reduce. Wahala go reduce. But wahala go still.
It's just that everyone should just stay in their lane and mind your business.
Day your day, make a day my day.
Day my day. The Christians, day your day. Muslim, day your day.
Jews, day your day. Hindu, day your day. Zionists, day your day. Do your thing. Don't bother anybody else. Don't stress anybody else. See, basically, if you no want stress for your life, no put stress for another person's life.
Because now it's just sickening. It's just sickening. So we're gonna round up this episode of the podcast, and we just want to say to you, if you're anywhere you are, mind your business.
Mind your business. So please stream our podcast.
Let's learn the art of minding
our business.
Are we minding our business like this?
Yeah, we are minding our business by telling people to mind their business, But it's lovely to have you guys listening to us. We've gotten positive reviews for the last 2 episodes.
And we would love you to join us on this podcast.
Yes,
just
please.
Share your bit and tell people to mind their own business.
Tell people to mind their business. Join us next time when we release our next episode. But please, this one, share, subscribe. We're on Spotify, Rook Chat. Go on Spotify, go on Apple Podcast, go on Audio Mac, go on Google Podcast, Rook Chat. That is RUQ Chat. We're everywhere. Just Google us, you will see us. Follow us, subscribe, share, comment, let us know. And for the next time,
cheers.
Mind your business. Until next time, mind your business.